Hi, everyone. Today is December 29th, 2019. We'll be publishing this on January 16. And you're listening or watching episode 212 of At Percussion Podcast. My name, for the first time pronounced correctly on this podcast, is Ksenia Komljenovic. And I get to co-host this episode with Casey Cangelosi.
Wait, I contest that that's the first time it's been pronounced correctly.
Don't ruin this for me. Just say hi.
Anyway, yes, hi everybody.
And Carli Vigna.
I was actually thinking Casey did a pretty good job with the pronunciation.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
I was impressed.
Yeah, how's your first hosting going, Ksenia?
I'm sweating profusely. You guys aren't helping. Thanks for not being like, hi. Easy script. No, make it difficult for me. Okay. Well, my icebreaker for the two of you is, how's your break going? What's up?
It's flying by too fast. It's amazing. It seems like it's a very long break here at JMU, but yeah, it's really just cruising by. How about you, Carli?
Yeah, same. Break's been good, though. I was up in Illinois for about a week, and now I'm back in Florida. It's been good. Much needed.
I really like that my colleagues, it seems like school activity does really stop during the break. Like I feel like I know, like, if there's something I need from someone, it's like, oh, great, I have a break, so I have time. I'm going to ask for it now. But I just love that they don't seem to do that. Everyone just kind of silently agrees, like, oh, it's break. I mean, of course, if something needs to happen or whatever, great. Yeah, they do it, of course. But it's, yeah, I don't know. I feel like I need to be that way a little more, follow their lead on that.
Yeah, I'm guilty of, like, I totally caught up on all of my emails during the break. So I'm sending like, oh, here's this big important thing that's been on my to-do list for a little while. Here's this email about it. But I'm not getting a lot of responses, and I'm fine with that. I'll hear back maybe January 6th. That's okay.
Isn't it awkward when you owe someone an email and then you send them like a Christmas card, or and they're like, what, do you have time to send me a Christmas card or do a funny Facebook video, but you don't have time to answer my email? It's bad.
Yeah,
so it
the
makes
Facebook
me not
post.
Right. So it makes me do less posts and makes me not send Christmas cards and stuff like that.
Oh, Casey still trolls all over Facebook all the time.
Yeah.
When he should be answering emails.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so our guest for today is Jeff Stern. I'm really excited about this, and I'll tell you a little bit about Jeff. Jeff Stern is on the percussion faculties at Peabody, Mount St. Mary's University, and the DMV Percussion Academy. You guys might know Jeff from his many fantastic recordings, which are all online, solo, as well as with the Icarus Quartet and the Percussion Collective. Throughout his career, Jeff has traveled extensively throughout the US, Europe, and Asia, and that's where I met him. I got to meet him in Hong Kong, where he made me cry by playing a single Cartelli note, and he made me cry in a good way. Jeff holds degrees from UMass Amherst and the Peabody Conservatory, where he was awarded the Harold Randolph Prize in Performance. He recently earned an artist diploma at the Yale School of Music, very prestigious, where he studied with the marimba virtuoso Robert Mann-Size. Jeff, thank you so much for being on the podcast, and hello.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
How is your break going? Where are you? What are you up to?
I am in Baltimore. Break has been pretty good. Yeah, I don't know. Life is kind of always somewhere in between break and work, so I never know quite which one I'm in. But it's been nice to get some time to spend with some family and have some time to catch up on some projects that I'm getting ready for in the new year. So yeah, slower pace, which is always great.
So what are some things that we should be looking forward to? What are the things you're working on?
Well, in January, I am going with my duo partner / one of my quartet mates, Matt Cowan, to LA. We have a friend out there, Thomas Kachev, who has written some music for us before and just wrote a new duo for us. That's really cool. And so we are going out there to do a recording session of that, and it'll be kind of part workshop and part, tweak, picking instruments and doing it all in one go. So that should be really fun. And then from there, it's quartet work and playing some concerts on both East and West Coast and getting some new music together. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to all that.
Cool. Well, I wanted to actually start off with more of what we don't know about you. We know about, UMass and Peabody and Yale, but we don't know how you got into music, or I don't know. So I want to know. Can you tell me how you got into percussion and what made you, go for it as a career?
Sure. Well, I guess from the beginning, I started with saxophone, and it was fine. I did pretty well, but I didn't like it that much, so I quit after my first year, and I went to piano because my brother was taking piano, and that kind of didn't stick either. And I was kind of not going to do music for a while, and I went to one of my friends' house at the time, and he was just learning to play drums, and he had a drum set at his house and was just showing me. I still remember he played and I just kind of lost it, and immediately asked for some drum lessons when I got home, and that's kind of where it started. So I started playing kind of rock drums, and that was where my passion was. I wasn't super good at it, but I was convinced that was what I was going to do forever. I was going to be a rock star, and then I kind of just went through phases. I think high school took me more into drumline stuff. I got into even some drum corps, and I started doing that when I was fairly young, and that took me even through most of my college. But I think one of the defining parts that got me to where I am now was actually a kind of a semi-failure with drum corps. I really wanted to be on the snare line, and but I was really young. I remember they asked the audition to play some flam inverts or something. I had no idea what that was even at that time, but they were super nice to me. They saw some potential, and they asked me to be in the pit. And so I played rack, kind of drum set stuff in the pit, and it was perfect because they, through that summer, they taught me how to play four mallets, which I had never done before that. And I wasn't responsible for doing it at all in the show. So all I did was play warm-up exercises. I learned all the scales. I learned how to play, all these chord exercises, and just worked on technique every day through that summer for, a few hours. And then I kind of just explored marimba on my own back home. I never really had much formal education on that until college. And that ended up being the next phase. I think when I got to college, which was also kind of more a drumline choice than anything else, I really loved the lineage there with Tom Hannum and all the great people that have come out of that school. And I just got lucky that that ended up being such a great place for concert percussion too. So I was able to kind of switch over into that vein while I was there. I was very close to Yale, so I would drive down all the time to see those concerts. And once I got exposed to that, kind of that was it. And maybe it's just a fad. I don't know. Maybe I'll go
this
to the
whole
next
this
thing
whole
soon.
Yale thing's just a fad.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. I did not know about your marching band background. I know Matt has a serious marching band background, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
Or I
Matt-
mean, drum. Yeah.
Yeah, he's done a lot, and he still stays really active. And so he'll help keep my chops in shape. We'll be on the road, and he'll ask me to drum. I'll be sorry, man. I didn't bring a pad or anything. He's like, I got you. I got extra sticks. We're gonna learn this thing right now. I was like, okay. Yeah, and this summer actually I'll be going out with him and his dad. They run a marching percussion camp out in Oregon, and I'll be joining them for the first time to do some teaching, and it'll be a fun way for me to kind of get back into the activity a little bit. So
Nice.
yeah.
So Jeff, I have a follow-up about that. I think about this a lot. What are some of the things that you feel you've taken from the marching percussion world, either teaching or playing, into your concert percussion teaching and playing?
Yeah, that has been a hard one to navigate. And to be honest, I spent a lot of time trying to get so many of the drum corps and marching band isms out of my playing. When I played for someone for the first time, and and they were surprised to hear later that I did drum corps, that was a huge victory for me. And it took me a while to kind of get to that point where I could kind of feel really fully at home in the concert world. But kind of since then, it's been more about kind of molding over and seeing what I could grab more and make myself unique or take advantages from. And so I think number one is kind of chops and technique. That was a huge thing that was instilled right from the beginning. And I think that's still why I've done a decently well job of avoiding injury and being able to play, big and full without hurting myself. It's helped a lot with teaching because, in addition to the rigorous schedule of practicing and performing, when you're doing that stuff, you're also just getting taught almost 24/7. So you're learning how to communicate things, you're learning how to dissect and analyze and communicate what the solutions are to students. And I still use a lot of that technique, I think, to kind of make things as concrete as possible. I think, with the concert world, you're dealing with a lot more gray matter, I think, just because, you're dealing with people on an individual basis. There's not so much right and wrong, which is a really hard thing to communicate to students, I think, when they're looking for answers, and you have to be like, well, a lot of this is up to you. If you can convince me that that is the right way, that'll be the most successful thing in the end. But taking whatever kind of components of their playing or the music, I think those things have really been prepared by drum corps of how to kind of dive into that and communicate with people about those things.
So it's really interesting how you said that, it was a compliment for you the first time someone was not able to immediately identify that you did have drum corps experience. And for me personally, what I love so much about your playing is the incredible elegance that you approach music with. I mean, seriously, it blows my mind, and it's so recognizable. And I was wondering, is that a thing of ethics or aesthetics? Did that elegance come as something that you consciously molded, or how did that come about? I mean, I feel like that's such a strong part of your language, and it's such a big stamp of your playing, for me at least. And I wonder, is it ethics or aesthetics?
That's a really interesting question. I think it's both. I think in some ways I can say I've always been pretty well attuned to sound quality, and that's something that I just sometimes to a fault, because I'm just going for a certain sound that kind of gets in the way of me just being in the moment or staying continuous with the playing. But I'm trying to think. I feel like a lot of it was just seeing some mentors and being inspired by what I saw and heard. I still remember reading Steve Schick's book and hearing all he had to say about making the musical message and the visual message match, and that's all part of a presentation that helps kind of streamline what you're giving to the audience. And that's something that Bob Van Cise talks about a lot too. And there's a fine line there between overly choreographing a performance and making something more effective through visual care. And so I think that's something that I really strive for. And then I think the other influence was just studying with Ayano Kataoka, who I worked with at UMass, and she is one of the most elegant players I think I know. And just the way that she can make the most beautiful sound on a single instrument, or, for such a small person, she can make the biggest sound possible. I have no idea to this day how she gets that much sound out of a bass drum or anything like that. And so I think all those influences together just help me think about that and approach it on a daily basis. And hopefully that's kind of, all manifested itself into how I play now. But yeah.
Which drum corps was it you said you marched with? I might have missed it.
Oh no, I don't think I said. I did quite a few. So I
Oh, okay.
started in high school with the Crossmen.
Yeah.
I grew up near Philadelphia, and that was kind of a local group. And I spent 2 years with them. I did 1 year of senior drum corps with the Reading Buccaneers, who are also close by. And then I did, in college, I still did it for 2 years. I went with the Blue Stars and then the Cadets for my last year. I didn't finish out my last couple years just because that was kind of time where I had to be serious with the concert stuff. I couldn't really take a whole summer off and worry about chops and not the touch and all those things. But yeah, I had a great experience through all 5 of those years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, we do have a question from Facebook from our buddy Jade Hales. Jade, thanks always for your questions. He asks, would you mind talking about the Icarus Quartet and how you all began playing with each other and what's in store for the future?
Oh, yeah, I would love to. So Icarus Quartet is my 2-piano, 2-percussion quartet. And we met at the Yale School of Music when we were all grad students. And this was kind of an accidental dream come true for me. I have always looked up to these kind of ensembles, Eighth Blackbird and people like that. Chamber ensemble, so percussion. I love chamber music, but I've always been primarily inspired by mixed instrumentation groups. And so that has something that has always driven my creativity and artistic kind of pursuits, trying to make my sounds fit well with other instruments and be inspired by different ways of music making. So my kind of secret plan when I went to Yale, I knew that I wanted to meet people that I would play with professionally. And I am somewhat of a control freak, so I had this whole plot in store to kind of play a bunch of duos with people of different instruments and see who I liked working with, and then try to mastermind this perfect group. And I was in process of doing that. And I mean, I met some of my best friends and closest musical collaborators through that process. But it just so happened that Bob put us together for one of the Yale Percussion Group concerts to play Paul Ansky's Textures, and which was commissioned by Svet and Gwen and their group called Hammer Clavier. And we did this. We played this piece extensively, and it was just the most rewarding experience and fun process of working with this group. We kind of just all clicked personally. We clicked musically. And as I was still going through this process to kind of bring some kind of, amazing mixed instrumentalist group together, I just realized that I already had something going that was, perfectly within my ideal, and I had a great time doing it. We loved the music that we were playing, and so we decided to keep playing together, and I kind of just abandoned the kind of scheming that I was doing on the side. So so that was kind of just jackpot with getting together with the right people. It also just so happened that the timing was perfect with rep that was coming out for that instrumentation. So with Textures being recently written, there was also the Steve Reich piece that was recently written. At that time, we had a piece by Brad Lubman that we picked up a little while later. And for some reason, those early 2010s were kind of just a goldmine for pieces of our repertoire. And now we're commissioning and actively trying to look at the future of the group. And so to answer, I guess, that part of the question, we're working with a number of composers that we'd love to try to make new pieces for our group. And let's see. Yeah, we're going to be recording our first album this May, which we are really pumped about.
Nice.
And yeah, this spring will be our first time going out to the West Coast, and we'll be doing some more touring out there this summer. And yeah, things are just kind of starting to, feel like they're rolling along a little bit smoother. It's always a huge push, and it still will be a huge push to make any endeavor like this, keep gaining traction and keep doing the performances and playing the music that we want to play. But it's definitely a passion project, and hopefully, it is received well enough to help keep it going. So.
Will the Bartok be on the Greatest Hits album in 2 decades?
I hope so.
Which part do you play?
I play the timpani part.
Oh.
Yeah. So less counting rests for me. But yeah, that piece is one that we mostly do kind of on request. We're still, messing around with some pairings of pieces that we can put that with to match instrumentation. One of our core kind of objectives as a group is to present ourselves in a way where we can kind of remain in one setup. And it sounds maybe trivial, but even with moving around, I think that we're trying to take a lot of inspiration from string quartets and other groups like that, where furniture is not part of the presentation. We can kind of be there as an installation. People can recognize kind of who we are and where we are, and we can let the concert experience flow. And that's something that we try to take into consideration all the time. So we're commissioning pieces that match instrumentation that we already have, especially when it works so well, and hopefully not trying to limit composers' imagination for other instruments that they want to involve. But yeah.
A few years ago, we did the Bartok Sonata, and we did George Crumb, Macrocosmos 3. Yeah. And did each piece complete. And I mean, the setups are so different. And of course, they're long pieces, so we could have intermission in between. But like that, it's such an issue. Like, if you want to do this concert over and over, and if you were to add another piece in there, it's like that matters so much. I feel like composers really, really have to no, sorry, we can't just do whatever you imagine and whatever you envision. Sorry, we're not going to keep doing that. So
right.
I'm glad you say that. Yeah, Carly, I think you were going to say something or add a question.
Yeah, Jeff, what advice might you have on developing a long-term chamber project like the Icarus Quartet? And what are some of the challenges you faced? How did you all overcome them?
Oh, well, I would say, first of all, we're still overcoming challenges. It's never an easy thing. I think one advice I got from a friend who is really good at this stuff, entrepreneurship with building ensembles and making things happen, is from a business book that he was reading. And I think the most important piece of advice that I hope I can keep for myself and also pass on is, when you're trying to go somewhere, the first part is to make sure that you have the right people on the bus. Before you decide where that bus is going or how long you're going to be on that bus, the most important thing is to make sure you have good company. And so I think it's almost impossible to know if the things that you're going to do are going to be, super successful or long-term or, especially lucrative or anything like that. I think the best thing that you can do is start from a place where you're just having an awesome time. Because even if you are successful at some point, you're going to spend a lot of years not, or trying to get there. We, the four of us in my group, have all invested a lot of time, a lot of money. We're finally starting to kind of see returns on that investment, but it's a really slow process. And I know for a fact that we wouldn't be doing it if we weren't just crazy about playing with each other and crazy about playing the music that we are. So I think that's definitely number one. I think the biggest challenges for our group specifically, I would say the two biggest challenges, even though I said I kind of hit the jackpot with the people and the group and everything, it is probably the least practical instrumentation and hardest thing to sell that I know. There are so many places that just don't have two pianos. They're scared of percussion, and everything is too big, too loud. It's just it's a nightmare to try to make things happen with that. So that's a huge hurdle that we're trying to overcome.
Would you consider electronic pianos, like touring with your own keyboards? I mean, just I feel like no one would want to hear the Bartok that way or the Crumb, but like with so many commissions and being a new group and everything, it seems like, oh, maybe that would, I don't know. Does that ever come up?
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, that's a great kind of workaround. And we're starting to commission pieces specifically for synthesizers, or even just one piano, four hands, which would also kind of make things hopefully a lot simpler for presenters and selling this. The one thing that we've kind of chosen as a group is to avoid as many artistic sacrifices as possible. And so I think, when we have the full footprint of our setup with two grand pianos and a whole ton of percussion, and we can make that sound and, connect in the way that brought us together in a really exciting way. I think we're just trying to not remove that from the equation if we don't have to. And so in some ways our pianists, feel about playing on a synthesizer like a percussionist would feel about playing on, either a synthetic marimba or a Fisher Price, whatever. It's just not an adequate way to represent yourself as a musician. And
it'd be like playing on a marimba one or something. Like
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Quiet, Casey. Come
oh,
on.
sorry.
I was gonna say it's like playing on a practice marimba with no resonator, something like that.
Exactly.
That's a nicer way to put it. That's more diplomatic, I guess, if you want to do that. We were having a fun debate earlier.
Oh.
and Ksenia just got a brand new excellent marimba one.
Oh, congratulations.
Yes, I have. Thank you very much. Good ad. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, continue, Jeff.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that pieces that are specifically conceived as electronically produced are going to be hopefully really successful, especially with the people that we're talking about writing these pieces. And that should be a way to kind of keep some integrity to the music that we're playing without being burdened with the instrumental needs. So hopefully, we're going to build that over time and, through that be able to access more venues and reach more people with that, and hopefully play in some more unconventional spaces, all things that we want to do with our music. So aside from that, the biggest thing is geography. We weren't, expecting to stay together, but we also weren't really expecting to be far apart. So, that's just something that we've had to take into consideration. Luckily, it matches the kind of weight and mass of the kind of stage presentation that I was talking about. So when we do these big events that are in big spaces and use the big full instruments, we make a big deal out of it and just make sure that we're, coming together in enough time in advance before the concert and trying to do things in a kind of condensed tour where, we don't have to kind of keep flying in for one-off things. And then just a lot of Google Hangouts and, meetings and notes and communication to overcome that. But that's something that hopefully one day we can erase as well and be in the same place. But,
Is it possible to rehearse over Google Hangouts? No one's ever mentioned it.
That's true.
I'm wondering.
We might need some, Google Fiber or something before that.
Some Google Fiber cable?
5G, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Internet too.
Seems like this should be possible, though.
They got to get on that. Maybe Icarus can be a case to push the production a little bit.
Well, we've just talked to so many ensembles over the years that's what they say. It's like, in fact, I don't know if we've ever talked to a duo that is together all the time.
Oh, wow, yeah.
I mean, literally, like, I feel like it's almost, more common than not, at least in the people we've interviewed. That just seems so difficult. But,
I think
people do it.
Maybe lives close by, don't they? Maybe Jeff would know this better.
They are, yeah, they're both in Seattle right now.
Yeah, and I think they made that decision, from what I've heard, to actually be close so they could do that.
Who's that? Sorry?
Arcs duo?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they're two really good friends of mine, and they've made a huge commitment to make staying in the same place a top priority. that's I can say even, a huge reason why I have the teaching job I have right now. Garrett Arney was working at Peabody before I was, and I respect his decision. I really admire the fact that he went all out for Arc Duo to make that a priority, and so he moved out to be closer to Mari, and they've been having great success, which I'm not surprised by. So
that's really lovely.
Yeah.
So I was going to tie into the whole Icarus thing, and that I wanted to share a little bit about collaborating with Mike Laurello, who I also adore so much. And then your guys, you've played and recorded Spine and Churches Made Out of Shipwrecks. And that piece, I mean, both of them are so amazing, but this one is new. So I'm like, I use it like crack nowadays. And I don't know if I want to play your part or Matt's part. He plays guitar. I mean, finally you get to play electric guitar on stage. What? So I just wanted to ask, what's it like to work with him? He seems really, really, really nice. But he's
Mike
so
Laurello is the man. Yeah. That's my thesis statement on that. But yeah, he's been one of our closest collaborators. He was at Yale at the same time as us, and so Spine was a piece that was commissioned for actually the same YPG concert that we first played textures on. Mm-hmm. And then when we kept Icarus going, he was just the first person that we went to write a piece for us, and we got this amazing piece, Shipwrecks. That was a perfect instance of when you ask a composer to write for a certain setup, and they kind of go a different way with it. We asked him to write for the texture setup. He left the marimba and the vibes there, except the marimba gets played for about 2 seconds. And he said, I'm thinking about putting a little electric guitar in there. And we said, okay, none of us really play guitar. And he's like, it'll be easy, don't worry about it. Mm-hmm. And then a month or two later, he said, hey, this guitar part is getting a little longer than I planned for. Is that okay? We're like, yeah, whatever you think. And then a couple months later, he handed us the piece. He was like, I left him on electric guitar the whole time. I hope that's cool. So it ended up being great. And he always really wanted to write an EBO piece for the pianos. And so that's the whole first section of it. It's really, really intensely beautiful.
What are the things on the piano strings? EBOs?
They're called EBOs, yeah, electronic bows.
And what, they're like vibrating?
So it makes a sine wave, I believe. It creates a frequency. It was originally made for electric guitar, which it's still, I think, primarily used for. And we don't use it on the guitar in the piece at all. But basically, it has a little indent that you rest on the the adjacent strings of an instrument, and then it has a little sine wave that kind of pulses between there, and it gets the one string just vibrating, and so it kind of creates a sustain.
So it's a speaker.
It's all acoustic. Nothing. I mean, the instrument itself is electronic, but the sound being produced is only the string vibrating. Yeah.
It's really cool.
It's a really cool effect, and apparently composers talk about using it on the piano all the time. It's a little less wieldy. It's hard to get all the rattles out because it sits so perfectly on electric guitar, and the strings are thinner and easier to get vibrating. Yeah, he always wanted to do a piano EBO piece, and this ended up being the piece, and it works really well. So, I play these opening vibe notes that you can't really tell where the vibe trails off, and the piano kind of keeps it going, and it's this really amazing kind of color transformation. But yeah, so, and then after playing that piece a bunch, he was the first person, and then either the second or third person that we went back to. Now we're playing this piece by him called Big Things that he had originally written for a kind of rock-based quintet. And he reworked for our quartet, and it's been awesome. So we play that all the time now. And yeah, he's an amazing sound engineer. Aside from composition, he did his undergrad in Berkeley with recording arts. And so he's recorded, I think, all of our videos, if not almost all of our videos. He's the recording manager at Bowling Green, where Yevgeny, one of our pianists, is also on faculty. So we're really lucky to have a connection there geographically and collegially. And so we work with him all the time. He's going to be recording our album in May for us as well. And
nice.
yeah. And a solo project might be on the way, but
Oh,
yeah.
wow. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, his sound engineering is incredible. Listening to how he did Spine, and Churches, it's just, wow, amazing. It's such a great collaboration. I love it when I see the five of you working together. Every time I'm like, oh my God, it's my favorite group of people.
Oh,
It's always good. Yeah, it's always good.
I was going to say, Carli, you had a topic that you wanted to discuss today.
I do, yeah, to give Jeff a little bit of a break. I'm working right now. I'm preparing to give a talk in a few weeks at FMEA, the Florida Music Educators Association convention in January, on encouraging middle and high school percussion students to be as well-rounded as possible. Seems to be something that we talk about a lot. Making sure that students are getting the skills that they need. So since we all teach at some level, I thought I'd share some of my ideas with you all and see what you may have to add. And I think some of this is targeted towards band directors specifically. And one of the most important things that we can do in a large ensemble setting is to make sure that whether it's a percussion teacher or the band director is giving careful thought and planning to all the percussion part assignments. I think that is number one most important thing. This means avoiding the fallback kind of niche assignments and rotating as much as possible, making sure students are playing different instruments. Maybe you're still giving your strongest mallet player the most challenging mallet part, but maybe somebody that's still developing their reading and confidence and mallet chops can take on the challenge of a little bit more accessible part. It's totally time consuming, but totally worthwhile, I think. And I always try to do it with my students. Probably the second most important factor in my mind anyway, especially for middle and high school students, is just having access to keyboard instruments and timpani for practicing. It's something I hear all the time. Students practice a lot of snare drum. Maybe they have a drum set at home, they're playing drum set, but they have to schedule their time either after school to play marimba, and over breaks they can't, they just don't have access to it. So as teachers, I think if there is any way to solve this logistical challenge that most students are facing to practice, we should do it. A lot of times it involves careful planning, maybe scheduling when students can practice on one instrument and where. Sometimes students are doing long-term rentals at home, or some schools that I work with will have a instrument that students can take home, which is amazing if anybody has that kind of resource. Purchasing practice instruments, band directors just making the instruments available as much as possible before school, during school, after school. But that's super important and something students run into. Once you get to college, we don't have to worry about that so much. The third thing that I'm thinking about is just cultivating a culture of strengthening students' weaker areas while still highlighting their strengths. So it's kind of about creating a learning environment where students are not afraid to try something that's less familiar to them for fear of making a mistake or being embarrassed. And to me, this is a healthy learning environment. I think sometimes when students avoid certain areas of percussion, it's just because they don't want anybody to hear that they're playing bad, or maybe their snare drum roll isn't the smoothest, or maybe they're just afraid of making a mistake. So I think that's super important. Encourage everyone to try everything. And in my experience, every student has some less comfortable area. So if everybody is trying something new at some point, it just kind of opens up the environment to be more positive. Finally, actually, I have two more. One more is always encouraging private lessons. That's more for band directors, but for us as well. Just, we all know the benefits. Taking all state auditions, at least here in Florida, not every state is like this, but here in Florida, to audition for all state, you have to do mallets, timpani, and snare drum. So sometimes you'll see a student that is like doing great with mallets and snare drum, has a lot of experience, and we got to get those timpani chops and technique up to par. Here's an audition with a goal in mind. So doing solo and ensemble on multiple instruments, or maybe rotate like a different instrument every year. One thing I like to do a lot is just planning recitals or playing tests sometimes in the band classroom, just to give students a deadline. And I always think about the classic Leonard Bernstein quote, to achieve great things, two things are needed: a plan and not quite enough time, which is a feeling probably we're all familiar with. But sometimes just having that deadline, that performance is in the calendar, will jumpstart the students. Oh yeah, I've got this audition, I've got this recital, and all of us really, but especially students. And then finally, the last thing that I have to share today is just planning warm-ups that target specific areas, like different instruments or different challenges, either technical facility, maybe sight reading. And this could be like on a personal level, individual warm-ups, like we're giving our private students warm-ups to do, or in a group, maybe a percussion class, or in the band classroom, like having something for percussionists to play when the rest of the band is warming up is important. So what do you guys think? Anybody have anything to add?
Oh,
How do we
yeah,
help
like
our students be well-rounded?
it's such an important message, and you're talking to mostly like pre-collegiate groups, right? And
Yeah.
teachers.
Yeah,
Yeah,
this will
this
be.
reminds me so much of the conversation we had with the ed committee that you booked, and yeah, so much of that I feel like it's an ongoing debate. Like, okay, are you preparing these students to be the best future musicians possible, or are you just trying to provide the most enriching experience ever? And yeah, I feel like a lot of directors and teachers think, well, if we win and the group overall sounds better, that's a more enriching experience than if they're well-rounded and are more likely to go into college or whatever. But again, like we said before, I think a lot of them are wondering, like, well, do I even want them to go into college and blah blah blah. Like, and of course, I think you're right. I agree. Like, yeah, you should make them well-rounded. Like, it's a drag when that you've got that one kid who, because they have a piano background, they get put on all the mallet parts and they never get to play anything else. And that's not for their benefit, it's for the director's benefit. And so I think it's great we can't say that stuff enough. And I bet you're going to have a packed house. I think it was either Bill Schultes or Tracy Wiggins said recently that, whenever they do one of their Midwest ed clinics or something, and it's about timpani technique or how to teach your students to crash cymbals or whatever, it's always a packed house. Like, it's so hard for directors, I think.
Yeah, everybody's wondering those things.
I'm always doing those things. I'd attend.
Casey, one of the things you're talking about, we want the students to be well-rounded. One of the biggest reasons, like, of course, if they're going to be music majors, yeah, they need to have some background on timpani. They need to be able to play all the instruments that they'll need for their audition. But when I think about the students that I have, the high schoolers especially, that are, going to be doctors or dentists or lawyers or, any other field other than music, what they learn, I think the biggest lesson I want them to learn is what it feels like to tackle a challenge and overcome it. They get like confidence, and then they approach challenges with like a logical timeline, and they know that they can do it and problem solve. That's the biggie for
course. Me. Well, that makes so much sense. Like, for no matter what you're doing after this 4-year high school band or orchestra experience, like, what's the point of just doing something you can already do? Like, why play the mallet part that you can already play? No, you should play the snare drum part that you can't play, and then you'll achieve that and overcome it, and then that to me is a richer experience than just guaranteeing to win the trophy or whatever.
Yeah.
So I have a question, then I'll direct this at Jeff. So we just had our previous guest was Conrado Moya, who is a marimbist, and he's a marimba professor. He studied percussion, but he early on knew that he really wanted to focus on marimba. And I guess a question for all of you, because you guys get to teach these young people who might recognize early on or feel seduced by a particular instrument early on, that they just want to focus on that. And it is in some way possible to have a career as a marimbist only. I mean, Nancy Zeltzman does it. Katarzyna Mićka does it. There are many people who do focus on a single instrument.
Pius Chang with the triangle.
Pius Chang. Eriko Daimo and so on.
Eriko with the tambourine, yeah.
Kazoo. I think she was good at kazoo. Jeff, what do? You teach at Peabody, and you teach alongside Jisoo and Robert Van Cise.
Mm-hmm.
So can you tell us about that process of, you might get some diamonds in the rough there who early on know what they visualize their career to be. What do you do about them if they're single-minded about what instruments they want to deal with?
I think usually it's not allowed. There are a lot of people, especially with people like Bob and Jisoo there, that are so well known as marimba players. People come in as marimbas and they kill their marimba stuff on their audition, and that's kind of what they expect to do when they get there. But it's really interesting. That's often a case where some of the other fundamental skills of percussion are sometimes lacking. We're best at the stuff that we like the most. It's the stuff that we're going to play the most and pursue the most. But at Peabody, and the way that I feel in general is, even if you have something that you specialize and are hoping to do the most, you have to be kind of as marketable and hireable as possible. And I don't know, there's something to be said for specialization, but I think the well-roundedness is just has to be part of the equation in today's kind of gig market and things like that. And I don't know, you can hear when a marimba player doesn't have the percussive skills as developed, and you can hear when a drummer doesn't have melodicism in their playing, and so I think it's a balance. You have to, and what we try to do is highlight what they're good at and make sure that they get to be on stage a lot and performing in those roles that they feel really comfortable. But often in the background, in the practice room, they're kind of quarantined to practice snare drum or whatever is kind of the weakest part of their portfolio. So.
Cool.
I feel like it's so nice when a student, you feel like, oh, great, they are well-rounded already. There aren't any major holes. And then you can say, okay, great, we can work on like what your favorite is going to be. Because, I agree, like it is important to shine on something, And some people, I think maybe they don't shine as a soloist on a particular instrument, but let's say Jeff, for instance, if all you did your whole career was the Icarus Quartet, it's like, well, that's certainly shining, like your chamber skills, you have a forte, and I'm like, I know you play great solo playing, of course, that too, but like that could be one of those fortes also, like that could be one of those focus things. But I also think it's a common misperception that if someone is, let's say Conrado from the last episode, like if he's really, really excellent at marimba and that's his focus, that's his career, well then of course he can't do a buzz roll. It's like, no, he probably can, and he's probably very expressive. Like his marimba playing probably really amplifies his other percussion playing. It's I think we often assume that falsely, because I've been blown away just again and again and again. Like, well, this person's really good at this thing, and that's how we think of them. And then you see them in another context, and you're just like, oh crap, I have to go practice. They're good at this other thing too.
I was just going to plug in the thing that blew my mind, and I can't believe I did not know this, is that I recently discovered that you can get, what are they called? Doubling fees in orchestras. Like if you play the oboe and then you play the English horn as well, you get more money because they don't expect you to know how to do, or you play flute and then you play piccolo.
Yeah.
Hello? Why do percussionists get paid a flat fee?
I think we can
get doubling.
We can get doublings.
For what?
For like if you play the triangle and then you go play the violin.
No. But for real, it depends. And South Florida is funny. But the general guidelines, I think, are that if you're playing concert percussion and then you also have to go and play drum set, or you have to go and play some world percussion, like it's kind of by area.
It's gray. It's a gray area.
Yeah, it's funny.
But we get
sometimes
them.
it happens. Sometimes it doesn't.
We should get quintupling fees.
Oh,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway,
like
sorry.
I think it's like it seems like help me, Carly, because you do this a lot more than I do, but it's like a case by case. Contract, right?
In my experience, it has been. I think in some cities where things are more standardized and there's a more active union, it's more consistent. But yeah, I've gotten it. I don't always get it, but
Yeah.
yeah, that's a thing.
Yeah.
I'm glad to know it's not all about inequality. Okay, Casey, you had some news for today.
Yeah, sure. So every week I try to tell us something that happened on the release date in music history. And we're releasing on January 16th is when this episode comes out. And I want to start with, in 1938, guess what famous two piano, two percussion piece is performed for the first time? Y'all will never guess what one. So that's
Britney
right.
Spears,
It's
Toxic.
what'd you say? Sorry.
Britney Spears, Toxic.
That's right. Yeah, the famous Britney Spears Toxic for two pianos, two percussion comes out. No, it's of course Bartok Sonata for two pianos comes out and is performed for the first time in Basel, Switzerland. And our buddy Ben Charles, our co-host, he's just dying to know. He has to ask every guest that has ever done anything with this piece, how did you handle the snare throw-off part in the, third movement, right?
I think it happens, almost in every movement, but there's a lot of quick stuff, yeah.
Yeah. Ba-bum, bum, bum, ba-ba-bum, that
Oh,
thing.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So did you all do it for each other? Did you build a wall? What is the thing you did? And then I'll continue with history.
This was highly debated and probably still highly debated.
Yes.
So first of all, I'll say the coolest thing out there that maybe we almost bought and still might buy at some point, even though it might be overkill, is this Kohlberg thing. This company in Germany makes these snare drums with a whole contraption under it that makes the snare bed liftable and kind of changing by foot.
Well, that's funny. We like talked about that before, but we didn't know Kohlberg had one.
Yeah, we thought about buying this thing, but apparently you had to buy the whole drum, and it was going to be, pretty pricey. So we do it different for different instances in the music. There are some times where you just can't, no matter what you would try to do. And so I think one important thing that we talked about is trying to make sure that it sounded like there were two drums and not three drums. Because in some ways you have, the snare on, you have the snare off, and sometimes if that snare off drum is sounding like half snare versus no snare, you're kind of adding a third timbre that confuses the motive. And so if there are extended passages where we can't turn it off for some instances of that, we try to just leave it on the whole time so that we're really getting, two sounds that you can kind of pick which one you're hearing. But then there are definitely some really exposed moments, like in the second movement with all these quiet rolls and stuff where it makes a big difference to get that thing off. So Matt does a lot of the flipping while he's like, one hand rolling the bass drum and stuff like that, and it's really great. And then sometimes we have to, tag team on the throw off. So yeah.
My favorite way to do it with my colleague Eric Genovan was because I played the timpani part when we did it, and I did the snares for him.
Oh.
But I think he eventually learned to not trust me on it, or it made him nervous enough, which is totally right to do. Like, oh man, Casey's gonna miscount. I'm not doing it.
Oh, yeah.
That was fun though. Yeah, no, it's so fun to hear all the different solutions. So, but anyway, moving on in history, actually a lot of these have something to do with Jeff. And another one is this fellow that Jeff has played the music of, named Xenakis. At age 24, he defends his thesis at Polytechnic School in Athens. The subject of the thesis is, does anybody want to guess?
Something related to architecture?
Yeah, exactly. Reinforced concrete. So, yeah, not something to do with music, but to do with his architecture background. So, yeah, way to go, Carly. I'm going to add a point to your quiz score, even though we haven't had a quiz in a very long time. But yeah, if you look at, and I've talked about it before, so I won't torture you all with the repetitive information, but the famous Phillips Pavilion, which a whole lot of Xenakis' career built off of, and he proves his design by his score to the piece Metastasis and da-da-da-da-da-da. I went through that on another episode, but it's this really beautiful curved building, and key to the construction is reinforced concrete, which don't know anything truly about, but it's basically a way to bend concrete and make it safe enough using rebarb in between, using metal underneath the concrete to help it bend and mold to the metal frame, basically. So he also has this piece called Concrete pH that happens at the Phillips Pavilion before the other really famous piece that is by Varese, Poème électronique, which also gets played in the Phillips Pavilion there. And Concrete pH apparently has a lot to do. It's a short, like 2.5-minute tape piece. It's really beautiful. I've listened to it for the first time ever just today, but very interesting piece about like utilizing something from the earth for this other unintended purpose, which is hence the title Concrete, because it is all about his use and knowledge of concrete and how it bends. And I'll just remind you, supposedly this Phillips Pavilion with its cool bendy shapes and everything, Xenakis and the person who he was working on the project for, Le Corbusier, more famous architect, they brought the blueprints to the engineers, and the engineers said, oh, this isn't going to be safe. The building's not going to stand. You're going to have to reinforce it in all these other places. Xenakis said, no, it's going to stand. It'll be fine. Not only did it stand, but the story goes that when they went to tear it down, the wrecking ball bounced off of the structure. Like it was so structurally sound that the wrecking ball couldn't bounce off. How do you say that, Ksenia?
Le Corbusier?
That's what I said. That's basically it.
Corbusier.
I just didn't add all the. That's like saying you say Cangelosi. It's like, well, you do if you're or like Bartok, like is it Bartok? Like what? No, if you see what I'm saying.
No, but it's at least Corbusier.
Corbusier. Oh, okay, with an A at the end. No, thank you. I do appreciate that. It's hard. Sure. So, yeah, Xenakis defends his thesis the day you're listening to this podcast. And we got the Bartok. A piece called Labyrinth Number 3 for percussion by Lou Harrison is performed for the first time in Town Hall, New York, 20 years after it's composed in 1961. I don't know this piece at all. There's a great recording out there, but it's not one that I like. A lot of Lou Harrison's pieces, it's one of those things that he has a bunch of percussion pieces that I think just don't get performed a whole lot. Stravinsky receives the United States Department Medal in Washington, and this one also has to do a little bit with Jeff Stern, a very famous composer. At age 42, arrives in New York and then begins teaching at Yale University, 1976. Anybody know who that is, Jeff? Your history of Yale, do you know?
Is this Jacob Druckmann?
Ooh, pretty close. That's a good guess. Penderecki.
Oh. Wow. All right.
Yeah.
He was a guest, right? Or was he on the faculty?
I don't know. This says begin teaching at Yale. So I don't know. Maybe he was just visiting.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I know what I'm thinking of, but yeah, that's fine.
Am I saying that right, Ksenia? Penderecki?
Yeah, Penderecki. That's good. It's not Penderecki.
Not Penderecki? All right, I'll edit all this crap out. Let's see. Let's see.
Jeff, aren't you impressed how everything in this universe relates to you?
I mean, yeah. I'm not,
literally every event.
It's only slightly surprising, but yeah.
It's not heliocentric. It's all Stern-centric world.
Yes, that's
yeah,
exactly.
Faculty. Password? What the hell? Oh, that's like the faculty portal. Man. Okay, never mind. I don't care.
I think he came back as a guest a few years before I got there. Oh,
that's cool.
And he, if I'm not mistaken, he conducted some of his works, like the victims of Hiroshima and all that stuff.
Uh-huh.
I remember hearing some of the people that were still from that time talking about preparing for that concert, and some heavy stuff and hard European modernists.
So one other big item, and this I dove into a little bit, in 1938, Benny Goodman, the very famous clarinetist, composer, and jazz improviser, who, people call the most genius of our time as far as improvisation, breaks through cultural barriers to play the first ever jazz concert at Carnegie Hall. So this event is described as, quote, the single most important jazz or popular music concert in history, and it's also considered to be jazz's, quote, coming out party to the world as respectable music. Both critical and public reception of this performance is really, really good and outstanding. So the idea of performing at Carnegie Hall is posed to Benny Goodman's publicist. He's hesitant at first because he's not sure if jazz will be received the way the regular Carnegie crowd receives classical music. So just before that, though, Benny Goodman's movie called Hollywood Hotel is met with just fantastic reviews and widespread appeal. And I guess this gives Mr. Goodman the confidence to say, yeah, now is the time to put jazz in, like, the most prestigious classical music hall ever. So he goes in full throttle on it. The Goodman Band cancels a bunch of other engagements to make sure they can have a few days at Carnegie Hall to practice, and they really try to make it a really excellent concert. So the concert sells out weeks in advance. There's 2,760 seats at the time. I don't know if it's still the same. They sold for about, they sold for $2.75 each, which is about $50 today. The concert began with 3 contemporary numbers from the Goodman Band, Don't Be That Way, Sometimes I'm Happy, and one of my favorites, 1 O'Clock Jump. And the performance featured members of the Count Basie Group, the Duke Ellington Band as guests. Goodman hands off a solo to one of Basie's guitarists, Freddie Green, who had never been a featured soloist and earns this reputation as the best rhythm guitarist in the genre. The vocals by Martha Tilton provoked a 5 curtain calls and cries from the audience for an encore. These cries for encore forces Benny Goodman to make, I guess, his only address to the audience throughout the whole concert, saying, well, we didn't really have an encore plan, but I'm sure Martha will return shortly for another number, which she does do. And then they slam dunk the whole thing with his Sing, Sing, Sing with a Swing, with tenor saxophonist Babe Rusin and trumpeter Harry James and Benny Goodman, and of course Gene Krupa. So that's what happened on the release date, all that stuff. And there was actually more, but I thought I can't say all of it. So that's January 16th for you.
It's way better than the week before when everybody died and tried to kill themselves with
when Beethoven was the topic. Yeah, do you remember Beethoven's nephew's name?
Carl.
Right.
Nightmares about that. Okay.
Oh yeah, we're all gonna have nightmares for a while. Yeah.
Thanks for that. That's really cool. Jeff, I was gonna ask you a couple of more questions. Of course, we have to talk about the Percussion Collective. I wanted to hear all your impressions about working with the Percussion Collective. I love how Van Cise uses this particular term, saying that you guys are a bouquet of players and that he gets to pick which ones are going to form a particular concert, but how everything is so well curated from the players to the music that you guys play. So tell us a little bit about that process. There's so many of you, and I, from what I understand, rehearsing is a bit of a challenge when multiple people are learning the same parts. And you guys have a lot of exciting stuff coming up soon. So will you tell us a bit about that?
Sure. Yeah, the Percussion Collective is just an amazing experience that I think timing just kind of worked out for me quite well, with me kind of getting out of Yale. Even at the beginning of the inception of the project, I was helping a lot administratively to coordinate schedules for so many people living around the country and even around the world. But ever since it's got up and running, it's just been a blast, really. So there have been a couple times where a lot of us come together and learn the pieces, and we just trade in and out. And it's amazing to see how the energy of the group changes, and then the dynamic, both of the playing and the discussing. And on top of that, I just get to work with Ayano and even Bob, and just play with all these people that taught me or that I grew up watching videos of and learning from. So, and then just to stay connected to playing with a lot of my friends that I don't play with regularly outside of the collective. So it's been a huge pleasure to be part of that.
Is there a number? Because there's like a number 18 being said, like there's 18 players or 20 players. Do you guys know how many of you there are?
There are 18. Yeah.
Okay.
It's going to be a little bit in flux, and I think the point of the group is to be always evolving and collaborating with different people, whether they used to study with Bob a long time ago or are starting to just come up through the ranks. And but that's the kind of unifying factor, I guess, that keeps it all together is our work with him, and having the same or similar approach to chamber music and thinking about music. But like I said, it's never the same depending on who's there. There's always a different energy. Playing across from Svet is a very different experience. I have to I'm already a pretty big visual player, but when he's across from me, I have to amp things up even more, or just make more faces or something. But yeah.
By the way, I found it. Penderecki did teach there for 6 years.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, but that's not super long, so it makes sense. You only knew about him when coming back.
Sure, it's a longer guest period. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
So what are you guys up to next? You were in Asia last year, yeah? I remember.
I was there kind of separately, but yeah, the collective did a China tour, and we're still touring this program of Reich Sextet and this new piece that was written for us by Garth Neustadter called Seaborn, which also has an accompanying video by Kjell Van Sys, Bob's son. And he's an amazing ocean photographer and videographer, and it makes for this just like really amazing experience. And going back to our conversation of marrying the visual message with the auditory message is really apparent in that piece. And then there are some new pieces being put in the fold. We just commissioned this new quartet with electronics by Alejandro Viñao with Consortium, and that is being added into more programs. There's also a new arrangement about to come out of John Adams' Hallelujah Chorus, which is originally for 2 pianos. And I was workshopping some of that this summer. It is absolutely beautiful, and it's being arranged by one of the members, Doug Perry, and he's done a great job with it.
Never heard of him. Hey, do you know my buddy Sam Suggs?
Oh, yeah, he was my roommate for a year in New Haven, so I know him a little well.
Oh,
yeah,
he's probably told me that.
Yeah,
we're on a committee together.
Oh, cool.
Oh, yeah, I give him a C-
for roommate choice or the committee?
For committee work. No,
okay.
No, I'm kidding. Sam's so fun. He's so cool. He's like good.
And smart. Oh man. Yeah.
Yes.
He's a real deal. Yeah.
Yeah. When he, Doug, and Johnny he had Triple Point Trio here, which is this person I'm talking about. Sorry, everybody, is Sam Suggs. He's our new bass professor at JMU here, but he has a trio, bass and 2 percussion, vibes and drum set, and he brought them all here, and they collectively gave a percussion class to the studio, and just Sam's doing better than I do easily. He's just so intelligent. Yeah,
I'll plug him real quick. If you don't know Sam Suggs as a player, he's got some sweet arrangements for solo bass of I think he calls them the EDM caprices, where he's taken some Daft Punk stuff and just he does stuff on the bass that shouldn't be done on a bass.
It's
probably can't be done by many other people. So it's really
well. It's just it's like where one performer would do like the occasional harmonic. He just plays a whole Bach cello suite in the. I mean, not literally, but he's just he's very comfortable in these extreme places where other people just find occasional comfort.
Oh yeah.
It's cool.
That's awesome. So do you have a favorite group of people to perform with? You don't have to tell us who they are. Just tell us if you have a favorite configuration of the Percussion Collective.
Oh man.
Oh yeah, give us some dirt. Let's hear some dirt. Yeah, their teacher was Svet Stoyanov. Have you heard of him?
Yeah, once it sounds familiar. Yeah.
Tell us about. Yeah, let's hear some dirt on people.
Some Bulgarian boxer.
What's that?
Some Bulgarian boxer. No, I think there's actually a visual artist or something from Bulgaria with the same name, or something.
Oh,
Yeah.
funny.
Tennis player. Yeah, I don't remember.
Tennis player. That's
Something
visual
like
art.
that.
Yeah. I'm that smart. Sorry, go ahead. Who's your favorite? Tell us.
Oh, I don't know if I can pick.
Come on, you guys are like the Power Rangers.
No, for real. I mean, I'm not even just trying to be like politically, secretive about it. But I think every time we get together, it's just a different take on it. And there are some people that I'm just really used to playing, and in the collective, me and Matt generally play at the front and the vibraphones, and with him, it's probably in some ways a more comfortable experience just because it's so familiar, and I play across from him all the time, and we just know how to match each other so easily and instinctively. And then other people like Svet, or whoever might be there, or in the rest of the group, it kind of gets my creativity juices kind of flowing a little bit more, because I have to figure out how they're doing things or what kind of sounds they're going to make. Just like talking about playing with another instrumentalist and making my sounds more like them. This group is a way to kind of really find a way to gel with other percussionists and make the group sound and look really cohesive on only a couple days rehearsal in most cases. So it's always a fun challenge, and it's a fun group of people. The hangs are always great, both in rehearsal and at the bar after the show. So
cool, really cool. Okay, my last question. It's very quick. What do you do when you're not practicing? How do you inform your life so that it sounds so rich when you play music?
Oh man. Well, I have to say I'm kind of still figuring that out and starting to explore that more. I've always been a little bit of a workaholic and practiceaholic, and I feel like now I'm starting to finally kind of fill out my life a little bit more. So I miss being at home when I'm on the road. I have a fiance here and a dog, and so I have to say most of my time is just spent with them and catching up and having a good time. But yeah, I love puzzles. I'll do puzzles, whether it's like actual puzzle or like crossword puzzle. That gets me going. I'm a kind of a math guy, and experiencing other kinds of art. So I'm always listening to music, whether in the car or wherever I am. Mostly not classical music. I get a lot of inspiration from singer-songwriters and indie music and funk and bluegrass and all kinds of stuff that I hope kind of seeps its way somewhere into my music making. Yeah.
Definitely. We can definitely hear the bluegrass.
Oh yeah.
That's the one note, that I particularly, the one flavor I really picked up.
I can't say I'm fully in that genre, but Punch Brothers is my jam. So yeah, I'll listen to anything Chris Thiele does. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so although I feel like I could stay and talk to Jeff for days, and these guys, of course, too, I think it's time to wrap up. So, Jeff, thank you so much for being with us for episode 212.
Thanks.
Thank you, Casey. Thank you, Carli.
Sure.
Ben, we missed you, and we're all looking forward to seeing you back here next week. Bye.
Cool. Bye, everybody.
Bye.